My name is Mike Iron, here interviewing Hazel Blears, who is a candidate in the Deputy Leadership election. Hazel, good morning to you.
Hello.
Thank you very, very much again for your time. A few questions for you that have come from the Labour blogosphere, which is ever growing, as you probably appreciate. And in fact, you're getting quite familiar with the internet campaigning yourself. You've got a Facebook account, haven't you, which I think you regularly update as well, don't you?
I have, and it's not just for myself that I'm doing this. In my role as party chair, I've been absolutely ensuring that the party keeps ahead of the game, because the last thing I want is the Tories to be using internet and new forms of campaigning more than us.
Well, there's some questions about that, and perhaps that's something we could come back to, you know, after the deputy leadership election, because this whole issue about internet campaigning is going to be interesting in terms of moving on.
Absolutely.
Okay, the first question is from a fellow called John Grahams, who's based in London. He says that he has really appreciated your campaigning style, you know, your enthusiasm, the fact that you're desperate to show that politics can be fun. It's about issues, but it's also about moving the agenda on, and you're not frightened of debate. But his worry is that if you try and enthuse people out of blind loyalty to the party and are not critical of what the government has not done, that actually people don't hear the message. All they hear is somebody who's trying to campaign in terms of good news without recognising that mistakes have been made. Do you think mistakes have been made?
Yeah, and I don't think we'd be human if we hadn't made mistakes in 10 years. And I think it's a fair point. I don't think you can just get people to campaign for its own sake. People have to care about the issue, they have to believe that you're doing the right thing. That's the way you motivate people, and therefore policy is actually very important. And I've always tried to get a blend of getting the right policy, but I'm also very proud of what we've done. And I think sometimes we haven't been out there enough actually saying, look, in 10 years, life is a damn sight better than it was 10 years ago. It's not perfect, and we have made mistakes. You have to be reflective, but there's a danger in politics that you start hand-wringing and saying, you know, it's all rubbish, and actually it's not.
Okay, so if we took that policy agenda and we took the tack that you're now taking, what are the 3 or 4 things in terms of policy that we've got right, and what are perhaps 1 or 2 of the things in policy areas that we haven't?
Well, I think our broad push to improve health, education, tackling crime and antisocial behaviour, and sorting out the immigration system have actually been the right things. But there are areas within that that I wish we'd done more of, done it differently. If I look at education, I think in primary schools we've done a brilliant job. I think in secondary schools we were a bit late to grasp the nettle. I still think the fact that 40% of youngsters in my constituency are not getting 5 GCSEs is not good enough. And I really want us to press on, because that world out there is a very insecure world, and unless our youngsters have got the qualifications they need, they're going to struggle in that new economy. If you look at health, I think we have improved things dramatically, but probably there's too many central targets, not freed up enough people at the local level. If I think about local government, again, I think we're a very centralised state. I want to see us giving more power to people out there. If you do that, you get the problems about equity. We all know about that. So I think broadly the right direction, but there are areas I think we could have done more.
Okay, thank you. Benedict Pringle, who's at the University of Nottingham, he's interested to know about how you regard online campaigning. I mean, he makes reference to the fact you've got the Facebook accounts and you've got your own log for this weblog for this campaign, etc., etc. But in terms of now wearing your party hat and moving this forward, do you think we are behind the game in terms of other political parties, or do you think actually we're moving in the right direction? What more can we do to harness the internet for campaigning?
Well, certainly 10 years ago we set the bar in the Labour Party for modern campaigning techniques, and I'm determined that we're not going to fall behind. That's why, despite our difficult finances, I've ensured that we've invested in our infrastructure, campaigning on the net, a whole new computer system so that our information gathering will be the best it can be, so that we can target our messages at the next election. We've launched a whole series of things that are moving our party from being a geographically based party into a party that's much more fluid. If you think about Pin to Win, which is a system on the internet now, you can find out where every by-election is. If you want to go, you can get the details. For the hustings that we're doing, you have to register online, and we're kind of channeling people into the online community, and that is the way that we'll do politics in a different way. If you can have an online policy discussion with the ministers who are on the policy commissions, you feel much more connected to the system. And to be honest with you, people's lives have changed. You can't now go to a meeting on the first Tuesday, second Wednesday, third Thursday. Nobody lives like that anymore. And I think we've just got to wake up to that and be honest about it and change the party really quite dramatically in the next few months.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask a supplementary on that? Is there a if the party's changing, people's lives are changing, isn't there another implication for actually what happens to those meetings and the existing structures? Is it possible to build that new technology way of communicating without changing the old style of communicating as well?
No, I think you have to have some change. I think you'll always need some structure because you have to select candidates. I'm not sure we're going to be selecting candidates online, but we might be. Might do a weblog and make you pitch, you know. But in a lot of places now, they are actually changing. When I started talking about this agenda, 10 years ago, I did 21st Century Party, all of that spreading good practice. There was a lot of resistance. People thought this is a secret plot to do away with the constituencies and, have central control. Everywhere I go now, people are saying to me, Hazel, please let's change the party. We're dying on our feet, we're bored to death, and actually we're not getting that new generation of young people in because we don't relate to their lives. So I think now there's an appetite for change in the party, and I think our leaders have got to grasp the moment and hopefully at the next conference really come forward with a plan for reform.
Hazel, thanks. Jim Noakes in Liverpool, he detects a growing concern amongst Labour Party members that basically they're not listened to, that actually this is a facade about consultation and all the policy forums, but actually they're not listened to. He cites in his submission as a question that you have a really good record in the North West of an active campaigner and feels that perhaps you are interested in listening to people. But how you translate that into a party structure? How do we engage more with members so that they influence party at a national level?
I think it's really important that members do feel that they have a say. I don't think you can motivate members simply to be, fodder to walk the streets for you. I think people join political parties because they want to see change. I think we've been really bad at the local level of policy forums in feeding back to people. That's been partly a question of resources. I would like to see some of the state support, which hopefully we're going to get through the party funding settlement, actually used to fund local coordinators and make the system work. In Germany, the whole policy making process is funded through the state and it gives you better policy. But my experience is that members don't expect you to take on board 100% of what they say. But what they do want is they want to know, that was a good idea, so we're going to pursue it. The second idea you gave us, maybe there's some merit in it. The third idea you gave us, we're not going to pursue. And I think if you're honest with people about that, they will accept it.
Okay. His second part of the question, Hazel, was about the deputy leadership hustings and the fact that the North West has, whatever it has, 30, 40, 50, 60 Labour MPs, Labour MEPs, fantastic structure, active parties. There isn't a single hustings taking place in the North West of England.
Well, Jim, I can give you some good news, because there is.
Right.
There's going to be a hustings at not at my personal request, but because the members in the North West felt so strongly about it, it's going to be in Liverpool, and we're all going to have, hopefully, a great time in our campaigning party. So, well done. That's people power, that's party power, and you've got a result.
There you go.
We have had another reader complaining there is no hustings in the southwest.
We did actually have a Chulo hustings last week in Bristol, but there wasn't a party hustings. I think there are 17 hustings altogether, and I know it's difficult for members to get there, but maybe we should have had an online hustings, and then people could actually get involved in this way. That would be a good idea.
Okay. Well, that is good news, and thanks for that. Labour Home, a number of people submitted questions via Labour Home, and a regular contributor is called Grim Up North. He's not a Hazel Blears fan, Hazel, I have to say to you. He's very concerned about the fact that your PPS resigned over Trident, and feels that actually having to rely on the votes of the Tory party to get that through was a complete low in the Labour Party in government the past 10 years. How do you respond to people like our friend Grim Up North and others who say, actually, the direction of the party and where we're moving is an abandonment of our principles and our values, not actually putting them in a modern setting at all?
Well, first of all, I don't accept that at all. I actually think having a Labour government in power for 10 years, which has transformed the lives of some of the poorest and most vulnerable people in this country, is often, a real affirmation of what our values are about. And if you think about Trident in particular, we took a decision in the 80s that actually having unilateral nuclear disarmament was just not the right place to be. And the decision on Trident was actually to renew it. It's not as though we didn't have nuclear weapons and were acquiring them. It was to say that in this very uncertain world, we need to at least have the options of making sure that we've got a strong defence. Now, people will have different views about that, and I understand, how deeply people feel. You've come up in the movement for 30 years, you've been an active CND campaigner, all of that. Many of us were, right? But there's a reality in politics, and sometimes you have to take tough decisions. Doesn't mean you're abandoning your values. Nobody ever wants to use nuclear weapons. But actually, in this world that we've got now, there's no other country that's got them that's abandoning them. And I just think that would be a foolish thing to do.
Okay. Dr. Dunk at Labourhome, there's two parts to this question, but I'll give you the first part before and hear your answer before we get the second part. Do you have any major policy disagreements with any of your rivals for the deputy leadership?
Well, my concern in this process is whether or not we kind of drift to a place where, our heart's really there, or whether or not we stay on the centre ground of politics. I absolutely believe passionately that in order to win that next election, we have to win Swindon as well as Salford, we have to win Norwich as well as Newcastle, and we have to win Luton as well as Leeds. And that means having a message that resonates both with our heartlands, but also with those ambitious, aspirant people in those marginal seats. Now, if we abandon that ground, I'll tell you, the Tories will be on it like a shot, and I'm just not prepared for us to do that. And my pitch, all the way through this, is to say, look, we've won 3 elections by having a message that appeals right across the piece to people right in every place of the country. Now, I don't want us to drift into playing to the gallery in those terms. Right. I just won't do it.
So if you don't have any major policy differences with them, the second part of this question is, if you don't, why don't you just say you'll support one of them? Why don't you say, if actually there's nothing between us, I will resign, finish my campaign, and throw my weight behind whoever? Why are you standing in the sense that if it's not a policy issue, it's about the way you will conduct yourself? Is that primarily the difference between you and the other 5?
Well, no, I think there are some policy differences between us, but it's not as if there's 5 in one place and I'm in a completely different place. But if you look at the issue of an amnesty for illegal migrants in this country, I don't support that. 3 of the candidates do. Now, I just think that sends out the wrong message. I think it encourages people trafficking. I think it encourages exploitation. And it says, that we haven't got a firm and fair immigration system. 40% of the public think immigration is the top political issue. We abandon that ground at our peril. So I do have some differences with some of the other candidates, but I also think that what I bring is distinctive. It's straight talking, I connect with people, I've got enthusiasm, I build the party, I can motivate the members, and above all I can help to win the next election with Gordon Brown as a balanced team.
Okay, true Labour, might sense where he's coming from, if it is a he. Why is the party weaker under your chairmanship? Fewer members, deeper in debt.
Well, I don't accept that at all. And if he's true Labour, I'm true Labour. I'm Labour through and through. I've been all my life for 30 years. It's been the most difficult year for the Labour Party, I think, that we've ever known. And I was lucky enough to be the party chair during the most difficult year. Problems with finance. We've obviously had to cut our organisation. We've had the biggest set of elections you can imagine in Scotland, Wales and the local elections. And I think we've come through it, not unscathed, but I've helped to support the staff. I think I've helped to build the party's morale. I've been up and down the country the last year, every single weekend, doing a fundraiser. I've been out during the elections in Scotland, in Wales, in every place I can imagine. I have genuinely given as much energy as I can to supporting people. I love Labour Party members. I think they're fantastic people, and I just think the job of every single minister in government is to do their ministerial job, yes, but also they're there because they're Labour. And in Sweden, right, every minister has to give the party 14 days a year outside election times, and the party can use it. You imagine what we could do. Ministers leading policy forums, doing training, getting out there knocking on doors. I think we should do more of that.
Okay. Hazel, how do you respond in the way that you are portrayed in some parts of the party and in some parts of the media of being a Blair loyalist? Absolutely blind loyalty is the way that you are described in some ways. How do you respond to that in terms of what is, I think, a caricature, but nevertheless it is the way that you're portrayed at times?
I am loyal to the Labour Party, and I actually think that unity, loyalty, they're much underrated characteristics. And if we haven't learnt the lesson by now that divided parties lose elections, then it's about time we did. But I'm not blind loyalty. I actually support the most successful Labour government that we have ever known. Who would have thought we'd be in the middle of a third term? And that's because we've kept ourselves together. I am Labour to my core, basically, and I'll go out there and fight for what I believe in. But I'm nobody's fool, right? I am prepared to stand up. I've always spoken my mind, and I'll speak my mind to whoever needs to listen. But I don't apologise for being loyal. I think it's a really important characteristic. I'll tell you this, in the next 2 years, with the resurgent Tory party, we're going to need people that are loyal, and hopefully people like me.
Okay, a few quick-fire questions. ID cards, good idea or bad idea?
Good idea. It'll help us to tackle international organised crime. Also, I do think it'll help us tackle terrorism. It won't bring an end to it, but I think the more information we can get about people who are in this country, the better.
Okay. English Parliament, good idea, bad idea?
Bad idea for an English Parliament, but I do think that we need to look at strengthening our regions, possibly the idea of regional grand committees. I would like to see more regional input into the second chamber, and I'd like to see the second chamber moving around the country, doing a new kind of politics. Somebody suggested the House of Lords should come to Salford Quays, and I wouldn't say no.
Okay. First past the post for general elections.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not a PR fan, never have been. I believe in the constituency link. I go home every weekend to Salford. My brother drives a bus, my family live there, and it keeps my feet on the ground, and you lose that at your peril.
Okay. Academies. Do we want more academies, or do we need to give academies a bit more time to see the impact?
I'm a great fan. We've got an academy in our area. Over half the children at that academy want to go to university. That would have been unheard of in Salford 10 years ago. I don't think we should have a cap on academies. I think we should have as many as we need to give kids, particularly from the inner city, the chance to learn in the best buildings with the best teachers and the best facilities. And because it's education that is the stepping stone to success, it changed my life, and I want every young person to have that chance.
You said, and you sort of repeated it here about, here you are, you're in the cabinet, there's your brother, driving a bus, you went to a grammar school, he didn't. The debate at the moment about grammar schools, we've got 164 grammar schools left. The Tories don't want any more grammar schools. We have tightened the admissions code so you can't get selection by the front door and you can't get it by the attic door, as Alan Johnson described it now. But in those 164 schools, you still can. Where do you stand on that? Why isn't it not an anomaly now that actually, if we're not going to return to selection, why have selected schools in 36 local authorities across the country? Where do you stand on the existing grammar schools? Should we keep them, or should we not get rid of them, but phase out selection?
Well, I certainly think it's not worth having the huge political row that you'd have over a top-down decision to abolish grammar schools, because I just think in electoral terms, that's not where I want to put my energy. What I would like to see happen is that our schools, particularly the academies, the new schools we're bringing on, are so good, actually, that people are fighting to get into those schools, and that's where they want to be. It was always the Labour way, wasn't it? Let's make health and education so good, you don't need to go private, and that's where I think we should be.
Okay. Final question for you. You can tell a lot about people often by the company they keep and the people they admire and whatever. Who is the opposition member of Parliament that you've got the most time for? You most admire? Respect.
That's a really difficult question because I don't really keep company with any of them. I suppose I haven't been on select committees, I haven't been on trips around the world where you get to know them, so I don't really know that many of them. And I have to say, when I look at them on a Wednesday at PMQs, I'll look down that bench and I think, do I want all these people from Eton actually in the 21st century sitting around the cabinet table? And it's like a really firm no. So I don't disrespect them because I'm sure many of them are in politics for what they think are the right reasons, but me and Tories, we just don't mix.
Hazel Blears, thank you very much.
Thank you.